I'm so glad to hear that things are really running smoothly in the Philippines now. Things are starting to open up. There are a few more things like unvaccinated foreigners who are not allowed to come in because they're not vaccinated, obviously. So, and there are some questions, still open, some open questions regarding insurance and travel return ticket and things like that. But for the most part, I'm hearing that things are going smoothly. So, we're going to review where we are today. That's what we'll talk about. It looks like a lot of people are really happy that they're able to go home now. That's good news. And I still have an open question with the Philippine immigration, and they haven't responded to me. I just sent a follow-up email today regarding the question of medical insurance, this so-called travel insurance for foreigners, especially the balikbayan people are excused from this. There is no travel insurance requirement. Now, I asked the Philippine immigration to please respond and let me know, at least if they do not have an answer yet, to let me know. So at least I know something is happening, and I will also know that the immigration itself, themselves, don't know what's going on with respect to this. I just called my insurance company, my own, to inquire about that, and they also will not specify. They will send me a letter that says I am covered overseas, including the Philippines, for emergency and urgent care. And they said COVID is emergency, obviously. So they will send me that letter. But they will not specify COVID, nor will they specify $35,000. They said it's unlimited because there was no limit mentioned. It's unlimited, which is really great, right? But they won't put it in writing. What can I tell you? As I mentioned before, that's how insurance companies do it. If it is not verbatim written on the policy, they're reluctant to do that. However, I have some viewers who did mention to me that their insurance companies are going to issue it. So once I get that letter from my insurance company, I will send a copy to Philippine immigration and ask for their opinion once more, unless I hear from them before that time. Now, the other thing is on, somebody mentioned to me about, gee, you're talking about all this requirement, but you don't say anything about trace. Trace is not required right now. The use of trace has dwindled down. I didn't hear anybody mentioning anything about trace. It doesn't look like it is being required at all. And trace, as you know, is something that gets used even outside of the airport. When you go to restaurants, when you go to hotels, you're supposed to show trace so they know you're there. But it's not being used as much. They had some issues, and right now, I wouldn't worry about trace. Now, the open issue right now that I'm concerned about is vaccination. The forced vaccination, especially of children. Now, of course, I heard from the Philippine government that says a parent's signature or approval is required. In effect, it's not mandatory. But if, and I'm just saying if you are requiring these people to be vaccinated before they can do anything or go anywhere, it is forced. It is forced. And that's not good. And these former Filipinos not being allowed, balikbayan, not being allowed to come in, it's also a way of forcing them. Filipinos or Philippine citizens or dual citizens are allowed unvaccinated, but why not allow the balikbayan to be able to get in? Even with the quarantine, at least they'll be able to get in. Now, I'll show you a couple of clips, and then I'll have to comment on it. Let's take a look at it.
Once again, we're hearing this described as an about phase, but I would suggest that we could really and should really think about it differently. So let's talk about what happened with Pfizer and the COVID-19 vaccine for children under the age of 5. Pfizer has asked the FDA to delay their decision because Pfizer says they need more data. The new data that they have received on this vaccine in this age group did not show an adequate efficacy with 2 doses. That's why we were saying here that the general belief was that 3 doses would be required, but they put the brakes on and they said they will continue their clinical trial study on a 3-dose series and submit data for authorization only when they receive that data from the 3rd dose, which is expected in early April. So therefore, the FDA advisory meeting that was set for tomorrow has been postponed. When people hear this, you guys, I really think they should understand that these kind of emergency use authorizations are not a foregone conclusion, that there are hurdles. No corners are cut. Just because we've done it for other age groups doesn't mean it's a rubber stamp, and this is a perfect example of that.
Well, as you can see, there is still an issue on children's, I think this is only Pfizer, but the other vaccines itself too, they're still being tested. Just like the one for adults, it's experimental. But so far, millions have already been vaccinated, but the only thing we don't know is the long-term effect of these vaccines. But I can understand them approving on an emergency basis these vaccines, because what are you going to do? Wait for 20 years until it's fully tested? By that time, all the people are dead because of COVID. But there's no doubt in my mind that COVID exists and that there is a pandemic. Unfortunately, for many people, countries, politicians especially, it's being taken advantage of. It's being blown out of proportion. The thing that's always in my mind is family. A very open corruption. And to me, every time something comes up, I always think, gee, is this just like family again? I don't know. Now, what's happening in the world with regards to COVID? This anti-vax movement is becoming global now. It's happening all over the place. Let's watch this clip.
Meanwhile, congratulations are in order because Canada's Justin Trudeau has done the impossible. He has turned a fringe anti-vax movement in Canada into a global campaign. I'm talking about the Freedom Convoy. It started around late January. Thousands of Canadian truckers drove into Ottawa. They had one demand: take back the vaccine mandates. Justin Trudeau had 2 options: reach out to the protesters or crack down. Well, Trudeau invented a 3rd option. He fled. First, he was silent for days. Then he tweeted from his secret location. He refused any kind of talks with the anti-vaxxers, which is fair enough, but Trudeau's decision came late. By now, the truckers had besieged the capital. They had blocked major highways with the United States. Trudeau's confusion allowed this protest to grow. And this is the result: a global campaign. Freedom convoys are popping up all over the world now, in Israel, in Belgium, America, France, Australia. They're all demanding the same thing: no vaccine mandates. Let me show you what's happening in Europe. The convoy kicked off in Paris. Hundreds of cars arrived at the Arc de Triomphe. And they kept blaring their horns. They unfurled the French flag. It was complete chaos. Soon the police were deployed. The protesters were cleared with tear gas and batons. Take a look at how it played out. The Freedom Convoy was driven out of Paris. Their next stop was Brussels. Dozens of cops are stationed outside the European Union headquarters. Checkpoints were set up en route to the Belgian capital. Clearly, Europe is bracing for chaos. In Greece, the protests took a different form. Thousands of unvaccinated health workers marched through Athens. They sang, they danced. But don't be fooled by their displays. At the end of the day, these people are anti-science. They're putting themselves and others at risk. The Freedom Convoy is the perfect setting for America's far-right groups. In fact, they've already joined in. American truckers are planning to mimic their Canadian counterparts. If Canada's protests were so disruptive, you can only imagine what will happen in the U.S.
Well, I just wanted to share that. It's becoming a global issue now, and it's not only in the Philippines where this is happening. I'm not talking about the convoy, I'm talking about these mandates. So I'm calling on for Duque to stop the mandate. let the people make their own decision. I know your intention is fine. It's going to be to protect the people, for the good of the people, but that is the people's decision, not yours, Mr. Duque. So I'm hoping that he's watching and listening to this. And just like the United States is being affected now, they're careful because it is spreading like wildfire. Of course, they cannot do this in the Philippines because you can tell the difference between a normal traffic and a one with a convoy. So I don't think this is going to happen in the Philippines. I hope not anyway. So, but I'm hoping that we can get back to some form of normalcy and let the people make their own decision. And please relax more. You need a little bit more relaxation on the entry of foreigners in the Philippines and let people enjoy their lives. A limited amount of restrictions or maybe advice, suggestion not to do this, not to do that is good. But when you start telling people, put your mask all the time, it's not right. You know what? I wear a mask, but only when it makes sense. When I'm in public, I don't wear a mask. When I'm in church and there is no one, I don't wear a mask. But during communion, there's a lot of people coming in, then I wear the mask. So I take the precaution, but I don't necessarily blindly follow the order. And I'm not being negative about this mask. I just couldn't breathe when I wear that mask. It's hard for me to breathe. So anyway, I thought I would just show that to you, and I hope you pass it on and show it to others. I'll appreciate that. And please click like and do subscribe to my channel unless you have already done so. Make it a great day, and God bless.